got no response. 2 ones from Municipal Resource Hampshire. Their response was, and knowing those folks, I asked them questions, and they suggested and that's why they added a proposal. And just as a little aside, one firm, national, they do the job, but I thought didn't hear from them, and didn't hear from them that back. I extended the deadline for you doing a proposal, and I said, I'm sure we will. So you get, I think you get the picture.
Yeah.
Can you address why Vermont League of Cities and Towns? I mean, we pay, it seems to me we pay them dues, they don't have training and they don't have time.
We got the same excuse.
Yeah, they don't have time. Huh.
But this type of work through VLCT,
You know, but that's what we did the last. Yeah. The person that organized it.
Yeah, and that's who we went to first, and they said they have no. Tommy went back to them again and said, hey, maybe you have bandwidth. And they said, now we've got people. Really, but there's something where they have less people.
Weren't they also doing searches for something?
They were
Yes.
doing
How many towns were they searching?
2.
Two?
That was apparently,
You know, which,
I do not. We talked to, it was Abigail.
Yeah.
I don't think she.
No, but then she did provide us, we said, okay, so what do we do now? And she provided us with sample RFPs and sort of told us how you would go about going after a firm. So we took that sample RFP and then we analyzed it to what we, that's what went to. There's a national association called ICMA, and so they are the National Association for Municipal Employees, and they are sort of the gold standard. And so we went to them. We are not members, but we website and just literally come through and found any municipal recruiter that was in that's on that list. And that's the list that we tried. Said no. So there have been multiple steps. So it's been a process. It's certainly been a process. And so that's why so Dominic, we've been talking about you in front of your own face. Welcome. We would love to hear what you have to say. This is our select board and our trustees. As you know, we are 2 municipalities, sort of separate, sort of together, depends on the issue. But we are the ones that have been making all the decisions along the way, and we'll be making the decisions going forward along with Tom. So we would love to hear what you have to say and what your proposal is.
Sure, great. I'm having a little trouble on the audio, so just when you all are speaking, maybe scoot that mic closer if that's possible. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, can we make it louder on our end?
Okay,
this is actually new equipment. It's the first time we've used it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should be 4 mics.
Yeah, no, and that's as loud as it goes.
Yeah, where's the
Thank you.
where's the other 2? I don't
Sure.
think I don't think
Good. I don't think we're gonna meet today. Audience. Sounds good. So with that,
yeah, that's fine. You know, just maybe. I find if you just be mindful of keeping your mouth towards the microphone, that helps, right? Well, good morning. My name's Dominic Cloud. And I just introduce myself a little bit and talk about how I might approach this project. So I've been the city manager in St. Albans for just about 15 years. Previous to that, I served as the director of the VLCT Municipal Assistance Center. And I did that for about 7 years. And during that time, the Municipal Assistance Center was pretty heavily focused on consulting and with a specialty in projects that required somebody from out of town with a diverse skill set in conflict resolution and knowledge of municipal government and municipal law. And a lot of that naturally spilled over into personnel searches. Almost all managers, but a couple police chiefs and department heads here and there. And it was that work that led me to St. Albans. So St. Albans has been a great experience for me, and it's highlighted, I think, the transformative role that the manager can play in influencing a community's trajectory. St. Albans was on a downward trajectory 15 years ago by any number of measures, and not to say it's all me by any stretch, but we really needed to do some strategic planning about where we wanted to go as a community, and then have that percolate out throughout the organization with all of our hiring decisions. And so increasingly we've taken that approach and helped other communities that are in a time of transition. And that's an approach that the city council in St. Albans is willing to partner with and oblige with. So I think Woodstock's a gem. I have fond memories of spending time there with Phil Swanson. Phil took us on a Jeep tour all around the town one day that culminated with a nice dinner and round of drinks at a local inn. And along the way, we met all kinds of connections that Phil had within the community, and been to Woodstock several times since. There's communities that it's really hard to draw a manager to because they're unstable. They have a tradition of quickly going through managers. They have a tradition of conflict. They don't have any economic drivers. They don't have a sense of place. Woodstock doesn't have any of those problems. And so you're well positioned going into the process, I think, to attract a quality candidate. It's not an easy time to be recruiting in any sector, and municipal managers are no different. But you come to the table with something to offer, and I think if we package it right, you can get a good response. So I've been involved since I left the league. I've been involved in probably half a dozen searches in various roles. I was the president of the League of Cities and Towns for 6 years, during which time we had a transition. Was involved with a search with the Mercer Group as a candidate, and then also as a board member, and then recently participated in the manager searches in Essex and in Shelburne with MRI, and that experience informs how I would approach this. I think it's really important to get some face time with you all and get a sense of what the challenges are that you see facing the community, what the opportunities are, and what your vision is for the next manager. Managers come in lots of different shapes and sizes, so to speak, in terms of their style, their bearing, their presence. Some have a very strong executive presence. Some have a very much a facilitative backseat presence. Some have a very high risk tolerance, and, like to, take on thorny, intractable issues. Others have a very low risk tolerance, and, don't like to, wake up sleeping dogs. And you have to match those skills with what the community wants. When I came to St. Albans, I was the runner-up in 2 manager searches, one in Stowe and one in Essex Junction. And St. Albans has turned out to be a great fit with the way I practiced the position and what they needed. And I realized, quickly into that Essex Junction or Stowe wouldn't have been. So that's, just the perspective that fit matters. It's all about fit. Technology, technical skills can be acquired. Knowledge of Vermont can be acquired, though that's a strong asset if somebody has it, but they got to have the right personality and bearing. You can't change any of that. So I've proposed $10,000 to do the project in a lump sum for you. I will spend my time calling prospective candidates, working with you and Tom and others. If somebody catches your eye, get that to me and I'll give them a call. I will use my contacts across the state to identify folks who I think are possible candidates. The hiring for this type of a position it's not all numbers, but the laws of large numbers apply. The more people you have to apply, the greater it is you're going to find the right fit. You're in a great position because you've got a seasoned interim municipal manager, so you can take your time and get the right fit. These are these decisions that can sometimes last decades if you get the right person. So it's worth spending the time to get it right. So that's how I'd approach it in a nutshell. I could certainly take any questions or have a dialogue about thoughts that provokes.
Okay.
I want to come over here. And see. The camera's right there.
Hi.
Hello, I'm Bill. I'm one of the trustees. You mentioned somewhere in your letters and stuff that we find somebody that's really good, we should grab them quickly because somebody else might want them too. And that means the process could take 2 weeks or 6 months, or how do we know? We feel somebody's really good right off the bat, should we grab them or just kind of drag it out, or do you have a strategy?
That's a good question. I think it depends on who the person is and what their circumstances are. Process matters, right? And you all will be accountable to the community for the success or failure of this candidate. It's one of your most important jobs. And you want to make sure that you're grabbing somebody who's running towards you, as the saying goes, and not away from something else. So there's some due diligence there. I think you want to be nimble in order to engage somebody in the process, make that first connection. And that doesn't happen all the time, right? It's just, and I can do a lot of that, place the call and try to get some forward momentum with them, interest them in Woodstock. But you have to balance your willingness to be nimble and go after somebody, but also recognize the weight of the decision, right? And, at the end of the day, I don't think quality managers are so scarce that you need to complete, particularly for a community like yours, that you need to completely adjust your process, contort your process to respond to a high profile candidate, right? I would mostly want to plant the seed that you need to be open to it. But I think we should try to structure it in a linear fashion, and then be open to the idea that you might have somebody who you're really excited about as the candidate pool comes in, and they might call and say, hey, I just got an offer from XYZ. Where do you think Woodstock is at? And then we could adjust accordingly.
Somewhere in the literature also, I saw you wrote about a survey. Is that a survey of the town? I didn't quite follow what that was about. I mean, we actually go to the townspeople and say, what are you looking for in a manager? And a questionnaire or something. I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, that was in some of the materials that Tom had prepared, and I think that's something that
I'm sorry.
let's talk about that when we get together. For a kickoff meeting. This is the province of the trustees and the select board, and it's not an election, and you're uniquely qualified to weigh in, and so I think that's something that you can do, but it's not a necessity. Fundamentally, the selecting of a manager is the beginning of a relationship between the elected bodies and the manager. And it should reflect your proclivities. You're the ones who are going to work with them most. And you're going to come and go. So they want to have a sense of what the community is like. But at the end of the day, it's your call, and the manager mostly is going to want to know what the two governing bodies are like. And so if you open that up to collect some additional input, you just got to sort of be mindful of waiting, WEIGHT, right?
I have a question on the proposal. I saw number 3, which says buyer, building manager. My understanding is that's probably means that you are looking at either an established municipal manager that's somewhere else, or someone that has transferable skills and can step into this job. Is that correct? I understand.
Correct. Yeah.
So in the transferable skills, and this is just a personal feeling, but you have to tell me if this is correct. We do have some union employees, and I don't know how many municipalities necessarily have that, but would that be a prerequisite to the person that we look at?
I don't think so. So you're going to get, your candidate pool is going to have some folks who have been managers in smaller towns that are looking to move up, department heads in larger towns that are looking to move up in position, but not size of town. You're going to have some folks who have some strong, relevant experience that might be transferable. You'll have some nonprofit department heads, nonprofit executives, and you'll have some for-profit folks. The mission-driven folks are generally a better fit than your private sector executive. It does happen, but two recent hires where folks had transferable skills. The town of Jericho, for an administrative position, just hired a long-term UVM employee who had really strong connections in their community and had served on a lot of boards and was a known quantity with some transferable skills. The city of Virgins just hired a manager who ran the Church Street Marketplace for a long time. Ron Redmond's his name. Had never been a manager before, but had a lot of the skills that they were looking for. You know, it all depends. It depends on the community. It depends on the person. You know, it's all about fit. And there is the linear path for the last 20 years for managers has been a master's in public administration, and then put in your time in a series of small communities and move up larger and larger every 5 years. You know, sometimes with the department head stop along the way. That was the most well-traveled path. The second most well-traveled path is a department head who worked his way up and became the manager, typically in the same community. You know, South Burlington had that, Bennington followed that path, and that can work. Length of service is not necessarily a distinguishing characteristics in all scenarios, right? You know, so we, you know, haven't had the conversation about whether there's internal candidates. Sometimes an internal candidate can be great. Your risks are low, they're well-known, but they got to have the right skill set. It's got to align with the challenges that you see before the town. You know, that's a common mistake that communities have made is hiring somebody local. Because they've just been there the longest, and then but they didn't necessarily have the right skills. So essentially it's matchmaking. So go ahead.
Dominic, I'm Jeffrey Kahn, I'm a village trustee.
Hi.
Hi, you have a good sense of Woodstock, plus. And you mentioned that you have numerous contacts, without naming names, of course. You have some folks in mind that you will be approaching.
I have a couple of folks that are worth thinking about, but I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse until I meet with you all face to face and get a sense of what you're looking for. You know, there may be challenges that you're aware of that I need to know that'll influence that, right? You know, so you know, there's folks that I see at events and that I interact with that seem to have some talents and are you know, sort of up and comers, if you will. But it's your town that we're hiring for, right? It's, you know, it's not people that I'm drawn to, it's people that I think would be a good fit for you.
Dominic, hi, I'm Seton McElroy. I'm the chair of the village trustees.
Hi.
We've talked about, and it seems like you have a significant amount of experience in Vermont and with town managers in Vermont. Post-COVID, I think that there is certainly people are changing their minds about jobs and the way jobs are done and where they can be and what they can do. And God bless the millennials, they have changed the way people look at work and their ability to travel and go different places. So can you talk to us about your ability or what you see in terms of going outside of Vermont and looking at candidates and going, you know, like you said, there were, you know, people that are in mission-driven positions. So going outside of the area that you live and work in and getting those candidates, because I'm very aware of the fact that Vermont has 700,000 people and there's only so many candidates you can get from that. So how would you go about going not just outside geographically, career-wise, but going outside of what Vermont and Woodstock is race-wise and culture-wise and, you know, ability-wise and all those sorts of things. I think we signed the Vermont, lots of towns signed these diversity inclusion statements. And so I want to be very aware of that and making sure that we're including that in decisions. This is something where we want to be aware of that. And we want to make sure that we have a broad pool of candidates that is not homogeneous.
Yeah.
So that we can figure out what works best for Woodstock. So how would you go about that process of going outside of what might be the normal search and what would have happened 10 years ago?
Yeah, so there's a number of nuggets there. Woodstock is known. Woodstock presents well on the internet. You've got one of the to-dos, I think that, this is granular, but we should do Tom and I would think could do a couple of tweaks to the town website, the woodstock.org, so that's a little bit more easily navigable for inspiring candidates' confidence. But the other website's great. Looks like it's done by the Chamber or Downtown Group, Woodstock, Vermont, I think, .com. So that helps tremendously, because the first thing candidates are going to do is they're going to Google the town and try to do some research, and they're going to try to figure out what happened to the last manager. ICMA, as you referenced, has tremendous penetration with municipal professionals across the country. If you're hiring a finance director, that you advertise there. And so it's not just city managers, it's higher level department heads nationally. I would use my own LinkedIn account and would also use relationships that I have with top graduate schools. Maxwell School's the top public administration school in the country. I went there, so I have connections there. The Kennedy School is a top school as well. So we'd reach out to alumni placement operations that they have. It's tough to attract diverse applicants. There's some of the things that I can mention, and we wrestle with this a lot with the city of St. Albans as well. It's not as if there isn't a website that's done, there isn't a DEI job board that I've been able to locate, and I'll look again and see if that's out there. But I have some relationships with professionals who are people of color that we can help use the word of mouth and their social networks. The best jobs for the best candidates often come through social networking, both online and old school, not necessarily advertising. And one of the strengths that you have is you're a great place. Place matters, and Woodstock is a community that somebody's spouse could find rewarding employment as well. Right, you're within the upper striking distance of the Upper Valley, Vermont Law School, to say nothing of just everything that's going on in town. So it's an easier sell as you look to diversify your applicant pool than some other places because of the demographic makeup of the community. But I think it's important, again, it's all about fit. You want somebody that wants to live in a community like Woodstock, right? And I'm not looking at the whole board, but I don't see a lot of people of color, right? So you've got to have somebody who feels comfortable in that, right? Again, it's all about fit and aligning with the challenges and opportunities that are before you. These jobs are largely people jobs. You got to have a strong technical skill set and pretty high emotional EQ, people that aren't people persons. They don't last long, right? So that's my job, is to find you somebody that you really like and you want to spend time with, working late into the hour on a dry municipal issue, and who they can, they have a high enough tolerance bar themselves for dealing with answering a question from the public that might seem like the fourth time they've answered that question. I think you got,
Oh, I've got one more question for you. Thank
Yeah.
you for a very honest answer. I appreciate that. And one more question, a challenge that I assume that we might have is housing for people.
Yeah.
Just this morning, an apartment that needs work went up for sale for $400,000. So this is not a place where it's easy to just buy a house. So what should we be looking at? How can we be advertising in a way that is truthful? So if somebody goes, Woodstock looks great, but there is, when you're talking about buying a home, you need to have a spouse or a partner maybe who is, has significant money, or, you have to be willing to live further out. Housing here is very expensive. How do we address that, and how do we attract quality candidates who won't be scared off by that? And how do we alleviate that so that we can get a good candidate who doesn't say, oh, well, I can't find anywhere to live, so never mind. How do we hit that before we find somebody that we're in love with?
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive into your charter. Is there a residency requirement in it by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
good. So one model for the Woodstock manager is somebody who lives within walking or biking distance to town hall, and buys a house, and has, maybe has kids in the school, and is, firmly embedded within the community, and you see them, and they live the life 24/7, right? That's the traditional model, and Woodstock has enough characteristics to attract that kind of person. Part of that is the salary that you set. After I sent the proposal yesterday, I was talking to a candidate in the Waterbury search, who informed me that Waterbury, who also has a municipal manager position, is advertising at 100 to 120. And I haven't had a chance to check that, but if that's the case, you're going to need to bump up from that. Probably 10 grand on either end. But I'll pull some salary data and some real jobs. So that's where it starts. You're also going to want to have a line in the ad that says relocation assistance provided. One of the things I didn't get a chance to touch on as we were talking about work models. You have to be present to be the manager of a community. You have to be visible, and you have to be seen. And you don't have to be in the office every single day, but you need to be there most days. And so you're probably going to want to have some openness to a hybrid model, and you probably have some of that already within your workforce. But the expectation for your manager is going to need to be that, I think, that this is an office-based job. You can't beam in from another county and hold Zoom meetings with your department heads. You have no credibility. But you can do that from time to time, and you probably want to have a flexible enough workplace. And this goes to the diversity thing, that if somebody has a family and they have a sick kid, that they can work from home that day. But the expectation should be that they're at that they're at work and it's office based. But what you might not find somebody, much as they would love to be able to walk or bike to town hall or have a great, place in town. You might find a candidate who's working for another community in the county or a neighboring county right now. And they're not in a position to move, but they are in a position to commute. I spend more of my time in St. Albans than anywhere else. But I live in Essex. And that's because my kids are in the school system and that's where all their friends are. And that works well here, in part because we had some heavy lifts that we needed to do, and it was helpful not to live in town. It was helpful to be able to run the business of the town. And, there's 10 elected board members who can represent the people. You don't need to live in the town to be an effective agent for the town. So all of that just depends on, who the candidate is and what you're looking at. And, you got to have some flexibility there. And you just keep measuring everything back to what do you think you need and how does it align and if it's a good fit.
I was on last go around, we had a screening committee made up of community members and representative from the select board, village trustee. We had I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself, Susan Ford on the select board. I think we had over 40 applicants. Is that realistic to expect that? And we obviously screened and passed names on.
Yeah. I think 40 is realistic. Doesn't mean it'll happen, but I think it's realistic. You want large numbers of qualified applicants. Sometimes you can get a whole bunch of applicants and they're meaningless.
No,
But
I wouldn't say we had over 40 qualified applicants.
Yeah,
We did have over 40 applicants.
yeah. It's a great community. It's a great job for somebody. I think we can draw on the right candidates. If we capture the essence of Woodstock in the ad, we direct them to that website. We have a good salary, and we offer to help them get here with some sort of package as necessary. I think we have a reasonable chance of success, and there's more people in the profession when they think of municipal managers, they're still going to think of Phil's long tenure. They're not going to think of your short recent experience. So they might even see that as a plus. It sometimes can be, sometimes it's not advisable to be the first one in after a 20-year manager who was well-liked and very successful. You got nowhere to go but down, right?
32 years.
32, yeah. So I once asked Phil about that. I said, Phil, you don't make it many moves. You've had a good long run here. And he said, well, I don't make many, but when I make them, they're big.
I've got one more question for you.
Sure.
In terms of the process, so I've read through the ICMA on their website has a recruitment sort of guidelines, which I found really helpful because lots of things I did not know. And one of their recommendations, best practices, is that the recruitment committee is just made up of people from the governing bodies, and that they recommend, and this is why the survey was added in there was, if you want input from the community, do it on the front end, survey, meetings, whatever. But then it is members of the boards and the town manager that are actually doing the process, the looking at the resumes, the doing the interviews, those sorts of things. Is that also your recommendation?
Yes. And I would add a couple of things to it. It's all about the relationship. They're going to work for you, not the public. They'll get a feel for the public when they're here. You know, either they already live here, or, you know, if you're bringing a candidate in from out of state, you know, they'll spend some time here, and you can set up some events for them to get us, you know, because they're evaluating two things. Is it a good fit and move for them professionally? Do they think they could work for you? And are they going to fit in? Would they live there? So the candidate has to have a chance to evaluate whether they're going to fit in and like living there. I also think you want to have this be a confidential process until very late in the process, maybe the end. And we can make that decision a little bit further down the road. And I don't yet have a sense of the governing culture in Woodstock and what the public expects. You know, there's certain towns that have a high level of public involvement on everything, and you know, there's a committee for everything, and there's other towns where the governing body does most of the work. And so I don't yet know what's the best fit for Woodstock, but I tend towards your job is to get a rock star, right? Your job is to get a person who, when they get introduced at Rotary Club, you know, or they write an article about it in the newspaper, people say, nice work, well done. And that rock star is probably working for somebody else right now. And if they're picking their head up, they don't necessarily want everybody in that community to know that they're picking their head up to look around. So in this case, the outcome and the quality candidate trumps engagement and trumps transparency. There's a community right now in Essex Junction hiring their first city manager, and they got the two finalists, you know, all over the newspaper, and it's very public. And one of them's a department head, and they're both department heads in other organizations in the county. One a regional planning commission, and one another municipality. Well, what if those candidates didn't want their employer to know? What if one of the reasons they were leaving was that relationship, and they're worried about retaliation? You know, so retaliation too strong, but you know, burning a bridge. So some of those decisions I think can be made at a later date based on who's in the pool and what the circumstances are that you're facing.
I got a question. My name is Greg Woods. I'm a select board. Are you going to review these resumes and toss the ones that need to be tossed? All of us.
Could you lean in a little bit closer? I didn't
I'm
catch
sorry.
it.
Yeah, my question was, the resumes are going to go to you, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And are you going to scan those and take the ones that make no sense for us to look at, just file them in a circular file, or are you going to send everything to us?
Well, I can do whichever you like, but my inclination, you know, I'm here to save you time and give you options, right? So and use my knowledge of the profession and the people involved in it to try to get you to a desired outcome faster. So if we get 40 resumes and, you know, 20 don't belong in there, I'm not going to waste your time. But I'm going to probably bring forth a short list. And you know, what I recommend, you know, in terms of the next steps in this process is we have sort of a kickoff meeting where we get a plan, right? And probably what I would do is get it down to a medium list, not a short list, but a medium list. And some notes, analysis of each candidate, sort of so that you can save your time, right? And then we would get together and make some decisions about who's in the first round. And that first round, I can do it, and I can, you know, make some calls and vet people, but they're going to be working for you. That's what they're going to want, right? And so we can figure out how to get organized so that they get some face time with you all. You know, I remember talking to the Bill Fraser, who's the city manager in Montpelier, and been there for, you know, 25 plus years, and he was talking about, he came from where's Harvard? Look, what's the name of the community in Massachusetts? Cambridge. And he was a department head in Cambridge and came up for an interview and really connected with the city council in Montpelier, and went home and told his wife and said, I love the town. You know, it's a great place. I could see us living in Vermont, but I really connected with those guys. I can really see myself working for them. And that's what matters. That's what they need to get a sense of. So my goal would be, if we got 40, I'll come in with a medium list and some notes, and then we'll make a decision about who's in that first round, both candidate wise and in members that represent the two boards.
Any other questions?
Um,
Tom, do you have anything that you want to highlight?
Really, yeah.
Okay.
Don's done an excellent job. Yeah. Talking about the process, what his skills are. Yeah, I think you did well.
Okay, well, thanks so much. I think we'll want to discuss it. Thanks so much. Tom is your point of contact. We will get in touch with you. I really appreciate all your time this morning.
You're very
A
welcome.
long one.
Have a good one. See you all.
Thanks
Okay,
very
thank you.
much. Thank you.
I would move.
I'll second it.
Yeah, motion, it's, I got it right here. It's 3:13.
Great.
3:13 and then something else.
Yeah, 3:13. Motion second by Susan, second by Ray, all in favor? Aye.
I would make a motion pursuant to
3:13.
VSA 313 sub A to go for the trustees to go into executive session. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Executive session. Ready to head back there? Are we recording?
All right, so for the trustees, I would like to make a motion that we accept the hiring of Dominic Cloud under the
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The select board, I make a nomination, Dominic, Ed Dominic,
Motion by Ray, second by Susan, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, motion carries.
Select board, I move to adjourn.
Aye. Motion by Susan,
I'll
Second.
second it.
by Ray, all in favor to adjourn?
I move that adjournment for the trustee.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We're dismissed.
All right. Thank you, everyone. bus this late.